presentations. First up, we have
you are in zone.
things all over the place. Old regions, big
Well,
we're the soon.
We good to go? Hebden, I'm the account manager for municipal relations for regional. I'm 2019 and beyond. By all means, just give me if anything comes up. We have many people at Impact, a vast array of expertise. Just want to share with you some about how we work together with municipalities to strengthen communities. To revenue requirements, you set your municipal tax rates and collect services in your communities. The provincial government passes legislation assesses property. The policy set the it's in tribunal. Here, the Ministry of Justice and related regulations up by the Ontario government. Municipalities assess values to provide information and inform their independent not-for-profit Ontario's municipalities, and we have the province also government finance. So I just want to spend a bit of time to help you better understand how we work. Sold by a willing seller to a willing buyer after so January 1, 2019 evaluation date, reassessment update in 2020 on which current value assessments are based. So to value properties, you have the direct comparison in evidence. It's crucial to ensure property sold has a similar valued. We also have from Walmart out of a mall. It's not the revenue generated by the Walmart rather than the rent that can be generated by having the Walmart in that mall. Okay? So this method requires detailed analysis of the income and expenses, both for the property being valued and other similar properties, to determine how much income a property could be expected to generate if sold on the open market. So MPAC analyzes the relationships between incomes and sale prices to calculate capitalization and then we apply that against that type of property. So this approach would be used for industrial, office building, retail property, that sort of thing. You also have the cost approach. So when a property is unique and sold on the market, rarely sold on the market, MPAC cannot rely on the sales approach or the income approach. So in these cases, we determine a replacement or reproduction cost of replacing the buildings and the structures or the other taxable assets. Once that's been established, we make deductions to account for depreciation due to age and functional or economic obsolescence. And then we add the value of the land to the replacement cost of the building. So these types of buildings would be like general industrial buildings or warehousing buildings, ones that aren't typically sold on the market. So as part of our ongoing work to maintain Ontario assessment rules, we regularly conduct reviews of properties, both individually and at level, evaluates changing market conditions and economic trends to determine if any potential valuation impacts exist. So I'm sure you can appreciate some valuations are simpler than others. So we also have two tools we've developed to share our municipal partners and property owners. I'm not sure why the coming up, but that's our municipal infographic there. So property owners interested in understanding their assessment and comparing their value to others in the neighborhood can do so through impacts about my property. So it's about my important information for both residential and business owners about assessment. We've also developed Municipal Connect. It helps us share and receive information from municipalities, specific municipal staff. That site includes information about your assessment base, your property assessment details, the people data, our service level reporting tool, and also our interactive tool worksite. So in addition to MPAC's legislated mandate to deliver an annual assessment rule to municipalities to help you determine your property taxes, we have a requirement to complete a province-wide assessment update every 4 years. Updates property assessment to reflect the legislated valuation date set by the provincial government. So we take this update very seriously. We've been talking about this for over a year now. For the 2016 assessment update, which is the current assessment cycle, the legislated valuation date is January 1, 2016. Every property owner in Ontario received a property assessment notice showing the assessed value of the property as of January 1, 2016, and the assessed values are used by municipalities to calculate property taxes for 2017 through 2020. So looking ahead, the 2020 values will be in place for the 2021 through 2024 property tax years. The phase-in program for increases only. So how this works is you have your property's value as of January 1, 2016. You have your property's value as of January 1, 2019, and the difference is phased in over the tax years of 2021 through 2024. So in this instance, the increase was $30,000. It's $7,500 per year. Okay, so when we send out a property assessment notice for the 2020 assessment update, all of the phase-in information will be included on the property assessment notice. So the January 2019 date gives us a year and a half to analyze data to ensure that the assessed value that we provide is transparent and correct. So again, the new assessed value will be for the 21 through 24 property tax years. So we understand how important accurate values are for a municipal partner. We have developed an assessment roadmap to plan for the next comprehensive province-wide valuation update in 2020. The assessment roadmap establishes a framework to position MPAC for a successful delivery of the 2020 assessment update, and we will be the single source of truth that sets the sequence of it includes the structure, deliverables, and timelines developed and the senior leadership team. We have listened to and gathered a variety of stakeholders to build the 2020 update. We've surveys with more than 800 external stakeholders, property owners, and surveys in town hall. So our goal is no surprises. So we have 7 property portfolios that we've created, and all engaged plans. They all have engagement plans, the information needs of municipalities, tax industries, and property tax owners. 7 teams established: the resident, farm, office, retail, commercial, industrial, special exempt, and lands in transition. We've engaged members of every team from across the province within our company. So we evaluate legal and policy, IT, communication. So the idea is that everybody shares their knowledge, and it makes for a better. So here's a bit of a timeline for our assessment roadmap. So accurate data and good sales information leads to better market analysis, more accurate values, and ultimately brings stability and predictability to the assessment role. In preparation for the last province-wide update in 2016, we conducted over 2.9 million data checks to ensure the quality and accuracy. I didn't touch it. I don't know where it went. Sorry about that. So this includes reviewing building permits, sales investigations, data integrity checks, tax and vacancy applications, and this is where the majority of our preparations have been to date and will continue on through Q2 of 2019. So as you can see, another focus of the assessment roadmap is how we engage our partners in meaningful conversations. We are committed to a dialogue that's open and transparent, and we'll be sharing information with you, property owners, and other stakeholders, providing an opportunity to contribute to the development of assessed values, to evaluate results and identify and resolve assessment issues before the return of the assessment role. So we want to keep you informed and active in conversations that affect your community. This only stabilizes the assessment base for before it's returned. In 2020, following our data checks and quality reviews, we will mail a property assessment notice to every property owner in Ontario. You can also see we have a time frame for request for reconsiderations. So property owners have 120 days after they receive their property assessment notice, and they can ask MPAC for a review of their property free of charge to ensure that the information we have on the system is correct. Our assessment year-end assessment report. This report is specifically designed for municipalities. So in this just passed, we provide each municipality with the year-end assist you in understanding changes in your assessment base to inform ongoing budget and tax policy. The report provides an update on MPAC undertaken over the course of 2018 to support the municipal sector, meet service level standards, and deliver an updated and stable assessment role. The document also shares our plan for the next province assessment update in 2020. So in this report, specific charts, the assessment change summary report provides the 2016 current value assessment and a comparison of these assessments for 2018 and 2019 tax years, and the assessment-based distribution compares the distribution of the total 2018 and 2019 phased-in assessment and includes the percentage of the total assessment property class. A bit of a chart and the city of Waterloo to the. So this is from the recently delivered municipal year-end report. So what tell us? Well, to me it tells us that most of your assessment base is made up of residential, percent of it. It tells me that if you have a major commercial property move either into or out of the city, it's going to affect these percentages, which will in turn affect all of the percentages. Tells me you have a lot of exempt, which is to be expected, having the the two educational, large educational institutions, and it tells me that you hardly have any farm, which again is to be expected. So comparing to the region of Waterloo, you can see you're par with the region. You're a little high, again to be expected, and farm you're low because of the four other townships. Over time by 2 minutes and 25 seconds. I apologize. But
thank you very much for that overview, John. Questions from Council? Councillor Veith.
Through you, Chair Henry. Thank you. How long does it? So there's lots of new buildings, new residential, new commercial, all of that coming. And you do this every 3 years, right? There's a new assessment. So how do the new ones come on? Do they just fall into that program every 3 years, or how do we get new places in?
The reassessment's done every 4 years, and that's only one aspect. So on a continual basis, as buildings are built and occupied, we actually have a mandate that we have to assess the properties, 85% of properties within 1 year of occupancy. So as they're built and occupied, we pick them up and add them to the assessment roll.
And I understand, and Ms. Patel will correct me if I'm wrong, but that the stats have been getting better on getting those through. I know that was a concern for us a number of years ago, but we've seen faster throughput, and definitely appreciate the attention and the collaboration with MPAC and our staff to get that done, because that matters quite a bit. Ms. Patel.
Thank you, Chair Henry, and we certainly appreciate John Hebden comes month to the different municipalities too, works with us. Questions we have on either the software or an issues, so this collaboration is certainly working out very well. Appreciate that from MPAC.
Next, I have Mayor Jaworski.
Thanks to the chair. In Waterloo, and I think our data from last year was nearly $100 million. So I'm wondering if these sales go through and these renovations which are happening.
Analyze us that occur 19. Sale, right?
That was a fun call, by the way. You
in or talks about affordable housing, affordability of housing, and if so, what do those conversations look like? If not, why not? Do you have a role in advocacy?
We just really let the market determine the value. So affordable housing, that's a municipal conversation. Yeah.
Other questions from council? Seeing none, thank you very much, John, for coming and enlightening us as to the process that's coming forward. This is a good heads up to councillors to expect that late 2020 will be an interesting time for us to help citizens navigate their way to MPAC as they receive those notices. And it's always a good time to remind folks that at the flip side of the property tax notices that we send out, we contain information on tax rate change that includes change due to assessment changes. So we try to be as transparent on those as possible, but that's always a reminder for all of us and everyone out there watching on YouTube or live streaming that the back of your tax bill tells you all the different components that went into what went up, what went down, and what stayed roughly the same. Thank you for coming. Next presentation we have, Earth Day presentation from Peggy Stevens, our Environmental Stewardship Coordinator.
Thank you. So my name again is Peggy Stevens from the City of Waterloo Environment and Park Services. I'm the Environmental Stewardship Coordinator, and I'm here to tell you about how Waterloo celebrates Earth Day. So Earth Day is April 22nd, and it's an opportunity for people to get involved to celebrate our environment during the month of April. Opportunities that are organized by the City of Waterloo include litter cleanup in a city park, litter cleanup around private property through the 20-minute makeover, and free family fun at the KW Earth Day event. When the snow melts, it's the perfect time to help clean up litter within public parks, trails, schools, and private property. Similar to Toronto's Clean Toronto Together program, Waterloo is focusing our litter cleanup initiatives on the weekend closest to Earth Day. So for this year, it's April 26th to the 28th. The Litter Reduction Task Force supports Earth Day litter cleanups in Waterloo region. And if you see red garbage bags labeled, the only cure for litter is you around the city, then you know it was the efforts of local volunteers. Since 2008, we've been encouraging businesses and schools to step outside at 2 p.m. on the Friday before Earth Day to clean up litter around their private property for 20 minutes. So Waterloo's 20-minute makeover takes place on Friday, April 26th at 2 p.m. This year we have approximately 3,500 people that will hit the streets to give their property a makeover, helping to keep Waterloo clean and green. City staff can participate here at City Hall, at the Service Centre, and at the 4 fire stations, and information is posted on Jostel. We also have our Earth Day Community Cleanup Program, and this year it's April 26th to 28th. So since 2004, we've been encouraging groups to organize a litter cleanup in their neighborhood park or public trail. On average, we get about 30 community and neighborhood groups that carry out a park cleanup. The last day to register for supplies is tomorrow, and the last day to pick up is on the 18th. Because the following week, I'll be preparing for the KW Earth Day event. So our Earth Day event has been taking place annually since 1999, and it continues to delight young and old, despite the cool temperatures in April. Last year, we joined forces with the City of Kitchener to deliver this Earth Day celebration, and it was a really great success. The goal of this event is to create environmental awareness with a focus on nature, water, and pollinators. We have local organizations that offer hands-on activities for participants to dig in and plant a tree, to enhance our urban forest, to learn about birds of prey with flying demonstrations through the Canadian Raptor Conservancy, building a bird box with the KW Woodworking and Crafts Centre, and enjoying crafts, games, and lots of cool stuff to touch. At the Earth Day event last year, we received a certificate designating Waterloo as the 12th bee city in Canada by Bee City Canada. And I'd like to share a few more opportunities to learn about nature, specifically our native pollinators. So as part of the Bee City initiative, our goal is to create habitat for pollinators on municipal parkland, to educate the public at local events, and to celebrate pollinators during International Pollinator Week, which is the third week in June. Our local Bee City working groups, so Kitchener and Waterloo, will be hosting some upcoming events. An evening in June will feature the showing of 3 short films with a facilitated discussion about pollinators in our community at the Kitchener Public Library, the main branch. And in August, we are hosting a family-oriented event similar to our Earth Day event that will be focused on pollinators. So this will take place at the Huron Natural Area in Kitchener. So feel free to bring out your family and friends to any of these events, and happy Earth Day. Does anyone have any questions?
Thank you very much for the overview. As the snow eventually recedes, it's always an opportunity for us to take a look at what we've left over the winter, and so it's very gratifying to hear that upwards of 3,500 folks are ready to help deal with that mess that the snow reveals every fall. Questions from members of council? Seeing none. Thank you, Peggy, and through you to everybody that helps make these events happen. They're really important, and they're very value aligned with where we want to be as a city, where we've often been as a city, and where this council wants to make sure we keep going as a community. Next up, we have Tracy to tell us about the Uptown BIA's 2019 budget, which we'll be seeking approval of both here and later in the agenda.
Yes, I know, it's very riveting. Thank you, Councillor Henry. So I know that in your packages you received the 2018 budget, and today the 2019 budget. There was a little bit of a mishap, and apologies on that. Hopefully you've had a chance to look through that. If I could, I'd just like to provide a few highlights and then probably open it up for conversation after that. This year we have a balanced budget. So in the past few years we've had a budget due to providing levy revisions to but the businesses that are affected by businesses north of very knowledgeable about our levy system, where they actually pay 60% of their levy. Last year, we withdrew significantly from our investments to pay for bump-ups to the community improvement program as well as the Uptown Streetscape, and as a result, our investment income is down. Our payroll is lower this year than what we budgeted for last year. We do have a contract person, so we're not paying benefits for that person right now. Administration is couple of years for our bookkeeping services, and we don't have a strategic planning session this year. Also, we didn't actually show the rent the rent rebate that we received from the City of Waterloo in the past, and we're showing it now moving forward with the investment in our events, and we've added our Spotlight Waterloo funding again this year for $20,000. Our marketing budget's a little bit lower due to, in the past couple of years, we've received some significant additional funding from the region of Waterloo because of construction. We do have a request in for this year, but we're hoping that it will come through. We're not 100% sure yet. Our beautification budget increased slightly. We're adding some new bike racks this year, and we're piloting a new proactive graffiti program with the City of Waterloo. We added in, and this is new as well, operational and capital reserves. It's just good management. These are for expenses to save for future costs. We need to hire a new staff, or when you're thinking about Christmas decor and street furniture and new banners and all of those kind of things. Overall, our expenses are expected to be lower than what we projected for in 2018. We budgeted $100,000 in this year's budget for capital expenses and $300,000 for a parking structure north of Urb. Should these projects come up again to fund, or not come up again, but come up to fund, we put those in. We may not use them. We haven't used them in the past couple of years, but it's been practice for us to put it into our budget in case they do come up. Our streetscape commitment's been met, so we didn't have anything in that line budget for this year. With regards to our investments in capital reserves, as I noted earlier, this past year saw us withdraw monies to fund the CIP and the streetscape. And just of note that our reserves are slowly being depleted, so our organization is committed to ensuring that we save for future capital projects.
It can be collected and remitted back to the BIA. Any questions for Tracy on the BIA's budget? Seeing none, thank you very much for coming and giving us those highlights. Saving is always good. Balanced budgets are better than unbalanced budgets, and certainly all those. That's great.
Thank you
Very much. And we'll pass the bylaw later, I'm sure. Yes. Consent motion. There are a number of items here. Anything that anyone wishes to remove to be dealt with separately? Seeing none, I'll look for a mover of all the items. Councillor Freeman, seconded by Councillor Hanmer. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favour? That's carried. Well, and I'll just look back and flag to Chris that I see a lot of stuff going on in the ward there. Before we get to PICs, I'd love to sit down and chat and understand more about what's coming out before we go to the citizens. That takes us to Section 6 staff reports. And first up is the Ontario Regulation 435/17 transient accommodation tax. And boy, doesn't that sound exciting when you start with the Ontario regulation number.
Thank you, Chair Henry. We were not the branders of the title of the legislation, but it's my pleasure to introduce the municipal accommodation tax. But before I go through the presentation, I'd like to point out a couple people in the audience here, and maybe they can wave. First is Nancy Kaiser. Nancy's general manager of the Radisson Hotel, and she wears multiple hats. So she's also chair of the board of Waterloo Region Tourism and Marketing Corporation, and also chair of the Waterloo Region chapter of the Ontario Restaurant, Hotel and Motel Association. So welcome, Nancy. And Nancy's joined by Vanessa Stevenson, and Vanessa's general manager of Homewood Suites by Hilton in Cambridge, and she's the past chair of WRTMC as well. Brad Witzel is here. I want to do a shout out to Brad and Adam Lauder, who couldn't be here. They're really the primary authors of this report, and they've been doing a lot of heavy lifting. Actually, it's been a report in progress for quite some time, and I'm proud to say Adam and Brad helped create the template that all the municipalities are using in their considerations in their council chamber. And Justin is here as well. He's been providing leadership from the economic development perspective. So I have a very short presentation, and then we can respond to questions. I think Nancy was listed actually on the agenda as one of the presenters, but I'm going to do it on our collective behalf. And we're both available, or all of us are available for questions. The presentation will cover why the municipal accommodation tax, the funds generated in total in our community and for Waterloo, and WRTMC city and region allocations that are proposed, and what the next steps will look like, subject to council approval. So why the municipal accommodation tax? As noted in the staff report, the MAT is a way of increasing our competitiveness in Waterloo Region. Supported by the Regional Tourism Organization of Ontario, our RTO4 group locally is a strong advocate for this. WRTMC, the board itself, our Waterloo Economic Development Advisory Committee, and the Waterloo Region Hotel and Motel Association. It's really a milestone moment, we think, for the community to increase the competitiveness of the $357 million tourism industry in Waterloo Region. The municipal accommodation tax is a standard tool, and you'll see it on a coming slide. It's in use in many, many municipalities now across Ontario, and is a common tool around the world. The lower tier municipalities are all cooperating with advancement of similar reports, as I noted. I believe City of Cambridge has now approved. Township of Woolwich has also been through the approval process. And just earlier this afternoon, City of Kitchener also went through a unanimous approval process. So a quick snapshot of the 21 other municipalities across Ontario that have implemented the municipal accommodation tax since the legislation became available in 2017. Prior to that, there were a couple of volunteer systems in place. I think Niagara Falls is a notable one. But this is under the true provisions of the legislation, and you'll note almost all of them have followed the 4% municipal accommodation tax percentage. And you see various implementation dates on the right. A recent addition not on the slide is City of Vaughan, I think approved just a couple of weeks ago at 4%. So funds generated in 2017, RTO4, our regional tourism organization, they undertook a little bit of a feasibility or market analysis of Waterloo region and what the potential could be for a hotel tax in our community, and they had CBRE retained to assist with that. And so the numbers on the screen come from that report from 2017, and you'll see there are just under 3,000 rooms in the entire region, and 28 different hotels that were used for the calculations, bringing a total of $3.27 million on an annual basis from the proposed MAT. The breakdown by regulation requires that 50% of those proceeds go to WRTMC, and that is our proposed model. So it's a 50-40-10 allocation that is being recommended in all of the councils. 40% would be retained by the generating municipality. So in our case, for Waterloo, as described there, would be $256,000 that would stay with the city. And 10% would go to the region, so $64,000 from the Waterloo model. So the proposed allocations, as noted on page 8 of the staff report, or page 79 of the council pack, it outlines where WRTMC currently spends their $1 million budget and where the new budget of $2.5 million would be utilized. And it's guided by really the strategic plan from WRTMC and the Destination Next efforts that were completed in 2018. And for all the municipalities, it's being recommended that we all create a new reserve fund and that it be supported by policy. Appendix B of the report outlines just how and where the allocations collected by the local municipalities are recommended to be used. And notionally, it's really about advancing the tourism industry and incrementally advancing the tourism industry in the municipalities. So our final slide, again, subject to council approval, the proposed next steps would be the establishment of a bylaw, and that would come back to council for approval. And introduction of the MAT region-wide for July 1st is recommended. Staff proposed to use that new reserve fund here and in all the municipalities, and we would enter into agreements, which is a requirement of the legislation for the municipal accommodation tax. And in 2020, we would be providing a council update, just how the MAT is running. Are we meeting the proposed targets that were identified, and any other notes at that time? And then a more in-depth analysis would be done 3 years out, and that's a pattern that we've followed with other new initiatives region-wide. And that would look at just overall, how's the program running? Does it need some improvements at that time? So that concludes the presentation, and we're available for question, Chair Henry.
Thank you very much, Mr. Anderson, and also through you to our local report authors for a region-wide process. Yet another example of all of our local area municipalities working very well collaboratively together, and Waterloo being an important part of that. Questions from members of council? Councillor Bodley?
Through you, Chair Henry. I'm curious, when we talk about the creation of the reserve and I look at some of the potential uses that are within the reserve fund, understanding that maybe there's a difference between tourism that we want and tourism that we don't want, whether or not we can utilize any of these funds for the unforeseen expenses associated with unsanctioned events that occur in our city?
Through you, Chair Henry, I'll take a first crack at it, and certainly Justin and Brad may weigh in as well. But I believe, generally speaking, that would not be the correct use of the funds. I think we need to demonstrate to the industry, and they are a little bit careful with respect to how this is being deployed in Waterloo region. They're really looking for mindful uses of the funds that trigger more promotion of overnight stays within the region. Of course, the unsanctioned events are something that we're not trying to promote, and I just wouldn't see the linkage there. Yeah.
I thought it was worth a shot, maybe.
At the very least, to the extent that that fills up hotel rooms across the region and Airbnb accommodations across the region, it does provide some offsetting help in an indirect kind of way. Councillor Vasek.
Yeah, through you, Chair Henry. Similar about the uses. I was curious about in these proposed next steps, if we were thinking about arts and culture, where would that conversation come up best? Where should I have that conversation with you?
Maybe I'll pass that one to Justin. I think he's been very active on that part of the file.
Yeah, so through you, Chair Henry. The plan would be to certainly arts and culture does sort of definitely fits the framework that we're looking for here in terms of leveraging these funds to promote overnight stays. If you look at a lot of what we're doing in arts and culture, a lot of event-based activities and other initiatives that drive that sort of activity. So we definitely see an opportunity to leverage the funding for arts and culture. We will need to go through a little bit of a process with the reserve fund policy, and perhaps Brad can talk about how we would come to agreement with council on what the policy will say. But certainly we can make provisions in there, I think, to make sure that arts and culture has an opportunity to leverage those funds.
So through Chair Henry to Councillor Vasek, yeah, the Exerve already exists for us, so we would be looking to house these funds in the Economic Development Reserve. So as part of the next Reserve and Reserve Fund update, we will need to update that policy as a new revenue source, and then also permitted expenditures. The thinking at this time is we would look to incorporate some general spending within the next budget. The funding from the MAT fund, some flexibility. What may or may not be available to us. So that's the intention, and then we can create a mechanism for how we would report on that type of spending. But that's the intention at this time, still to be flushed out a little bit further.
Thanks, that's all really helpful. This could just be my not completely understanding all the process for creating something completely new at a city. But is there a place for actually embedding it into a bylaw, arts and culture, like to say something explicitly in the bylaw about what we see arts and culture rule for tourism, and then, yeah, as a structural piece?
Through you, Chair Henry, maybe I'll take that one. I think probably the best spot for that will be the policy formation for the reserve fund and the actual use, which gets caught in an approving bylaw when council makes that decision.
Yeah, and in terms of council's broader intentions around what direction it takes the community, the strategic plan is a great document to lead into the budget, and the budget can pull from the various reserve policies as input into what we can and can't fund, though. As this gets rolled out in the first few years, we will have to be careful not to try to spend money before it's deposited, and to recognize that the dollars here are forecasts only, and we'll have to see how that plays out over time. Other questions from council? I had just two briefly. First, there was a brief note in your presentation, Mr. Anderson, as well as in the report around Airbnb. I know that's been a topic of interest for council, and as a matter of competition, I'm sure it's of interest to the hoteliers and moteliers and any other words I missed in that association. The likelihood that just false and pretending as here.
Yes, thank you, Chair Henry. It's a really good question. So for clarity, the short-term accommodations, as we've called them, the online home sharing, so to speak, including Airbnb, are included within the proposed municipal accommodation tax. And our staff, actually Adam Lauder, had a chance to speak directly with the Airbnb personnel, and they do this type of collection already. It's been in place through Airbnb in the United States and elsewhere in Canada for some time. So their system is relatively refined. I think there's some other platforms out there that we still need to engage a little bit. But I think the big one, in any event, we've had some confirmation on that front.
I know they're certainly active within sight of where I live in many of the new units in Northdale and some other spaces. I've gone on occasionally just to see what's going on in the neighborhood. And the other one, Mr. Anderson, is just something to take back. I see that as part of the spirit of cooperation. 10% of our total, and in fact everyone's total, is heading up to the upper tier municipality, and the intention is for that to fund key cultural institutions. I would note certainly the Clay and Glass Gallery is the only key cultural institution in the region that is not supported by the region. It is solely supported by the City of Waterloo. This would seem, with this new revenue source, to be an opportune time for the region to take a very hard look at how it considers that as we come forward and consider 2020 and beyond requests from those key cultural institutions. And I have to press that issue to the extent that we are able. And as we do an update, that's something I will be looking for as we consider whether the bylaw as written and the share as written is appropriate. So with that stated, moved by Mayor Jaworski, with a comment seconded by Councillor Veith. Mayor.
Well, I think this is a great day, great opportunity. There's so few ways to fund our municipality, with just mainly user fees and our property tax fees. And if you do back of napkin math, this is like a 1/3% property tax value or increase that we don't have to do, and we can put it to something good, potentially arts and culture. It sounds like so. It sounds like a day. And I'm glad. This is something for your
seeing no further very much. We have crematorium future considerations, presentation by Jeff Silcano, Commission.
Good afternoon, Chair Henry, Mr. Mayor, members of Council. Today I will be providing you with through. I've kept the 10-minute So myself was in 1977. It contains the chapel and niche space. Remains. Most of those are here. The two levels are joined, which obviously does not meet accessibility. The lower level of the structure includes the garage access for deliveries shown on the left, the two retorts shown on the right, a cooler, work area, and storage area. The two retorts are just over 40 years old and staff estimate that full replacements would be required within 12 to 24 months. The cooler has also recently been assessed and is also in need of removal and replacement within approximately 12 months. The lower level currently lacks a proper and accessible viewing area for the retorts. Per the Funeral, Burial, and Cremation Services Act, formerly known as the Cemetery Act, the city will always be in the cemetery business. However, legislation changed in 2012, opening up the privatization of crematorium services. Since that time, 26 new crematoriums have opened not in the city, have opened in the province, and very aggressive, large private enterprises now dominate the market. For Waterloo, we have seen the loss of 10 private funeral homes to the private industry since the legislation changed. Parkview currently completes approximately 1,300 cremations per year, and we estimate that give or take 40% of these are from the local community. And of the 4 municipally owned crematoriums in Ontario, 2 have or are in the process of divesting, and what I mean by that is no longer operating their crematoriums, and this speaks to the extremely competitive and volatile nature of the current crematorium market. To compete with the private sector, we would need to extend our operating hours to a minimum of 6 days per week with day and evening shifts. We would need to complete extensive building renovations and equipment replacements, and we would also need to provide accessible viewing area. The graph shown here shows our total number of cremations from 2012 when the legislation changed and projected out to 2028. Although the number of people choosing cremation continues to increase, what I'd like to point out is the considerable drop in our numbers since the legislation has changed. And although the demand for cremation continues to rise, so too does the supply for crematoriums. So two future options are being considered. Option 1, to remain in the cremation business and advance the necessary capital to do so. Or option 2, to wind down the crematorium operations and repurpose the existing building for interior niche space. Option 1 includes an addition to the west side of the building, shown here by the red arrow. Concept drawings have been completed for an approximately 3,000 square foot addition, which would include 2 replacement retorts, a new cooler, an elevator, a future lower level niche area, a new accessible viewing area, and minor chapel renovations. The capital requirements for option 1 are estimated to be $3.2 million. The current cemetery reserve would cover about $500,000 of that, leaving $2.7 million to be funded either through a tax levy or reprioritization of other citywide capital projects or some combination thereof. The operating requirements for option 1 take into consideration the need for extended hours of operation, as I mentioned previously, and to do this, we would require an additional 2.5 staff positions. As well, there would be utility and building upkeep cost to consider as well. The total 10-year tax-based support would be approximately $4.6 million. Option 2 is the wind down of the crematorium and the repurposing of the upper and lower levels to meet the growing demand for interior niche space. Working within the existing envelope, option 2 can be phased in over time based on community demand. The capital requirements for option 2 are an estimated $700,000. The operating requirements would see a potential loss of 1.5 staff positions, and these would be absorbed through attrition. And this would be undertaken in consultation, of course, with our labor group. Our financial models estimate that tax-based need would persist until 2028, at which time we would reach a break-even point based on sales of those interior niche spaces. The 10-year total tax-based support is estimated to be about $2.2 million. This is a challenging decision, and it is one that must take into consideration several key points. Parkview Crematorium has a history and a legacy of providing professional services for over 40 years. In terms of community benefit, Parkview has been seen as a trusted, long-standing cremation service provider within the community. However, it is important to note that less than half of the cremations performed at the facility are from the local community itself, and this percentage continues to drop as more private, local cremation options are becoming available. Financially, since 2012, since the legislation changed in 2012, the crematorium is no longer viable and the city can no longer operate as an enterprise. To continue to provide cremation services will require substantial tax-based support and will represent a highly subsidized service which we would be providing both to residents and non-residents alike. In addition, a new private crematorium is scheduled to open in 2019 in Kitchener. Therefore, we anticipate our numbers to drop further, and we haven't modeled those in yet. Based on the facility age and assessments, a need to make a decision is urgent. Full public engagement process can start immediately. We would utilize our Engage Waterloo platform as well as more traditional PICs or public open house settings. The public engagement will focus on the two proposed options I have just outlined, and we can return to council in September with staff recommendations. And I thank you for your time, and Susan and I are here if you have any questions.
Thank you very much, Jeff. Looking to council for questions at this stage. Councillor Bodley.
Through you, Chair Henry. I wonder if something that struck with me in your presentation, you said that the city will always be in the cemetery business per what used to be called the Cemetery Act, and I didn't write down exactly what the new act is called. It was more words. Can you maybe elaborate on that and explain what our requirements are, perhaps for new councillors as well in that regard?
Yep, absolutely. Through you, Chair Henry. The Cemetery Act, previously known as the Cemetery Act, requires all municipalities take over any cemeteries that are within that abandoned, also known as cemetery. Will be in the cemetery business. Should within our boundaries and that are abandoned by their maintenance areas, don't foresee any of those coming forward. However, we will always two cemeteries.
It strikes me that the benefit of operating the crematorium, one of the things that stuck out to me was the affordability of the consultation. Whether we have any analysis of how that actually impact people who are not through the sector.
Through you, Chair Henry, the market cremation is very competitive, and it is pretty much online with other crematoriums. There's very little difference.
I would like to say that if a family is in need and the region then will provide that service, and we are more
bases will be and how you envision those being applied.
Okay. And a glass-fronted niche or nook. It can house one or multiple urns for cremated remains. The glass and meaningful objects in there for the family members. There are certainly different types of niche options. There are others that are full granite fronted or bronze plaques in front of them that aren't see-through. The glass ones are certainly very popular for us. And the yeah, that's correct. And because we
and just curious, going to be asked the public actually know that we even do this now, and so often just doing the education component will generate certain questions, emotions, and just where are we going with that?
View and has been for over 40 years. Are more so around and also around understanding the and we can
Other questions from Council? Councillor Bodley?
Sorry, thank you. Through your chair, Henry. Just I'm wondering.
not have any province. Certainly change. One of the things is a lot of new more in the lines of carbon tax. Whether or not that would
or federal carbon tax change, perhaps more likely in the very short term, Councillor Vasek.
Culture around it, and so I guess I was curious if we could reach out explicitly to some nonprofit.
None. Have one. I was fairly clear the requirements under option 1 in terms of the much quicker tax-based support, and that's time. So we get to revenue control. So what look like in that time. And so if I'm not sure about it, I'm not sure the public would in conservation information. So I'm wondering if you can help me understand that better.
Certainly. Issues that there's revenue we have in local areas are all interior needs. And at approximately 20.
We're not using sell those niches as well as the additions in including the expansion just start to take off. We actually foresee that we are going to be coming up in revenues, not associated with the cremations, and then become revenue neutral by 2028.
I'll look to Ms. Patel.
To add to comments from Ms. Bolt, so yes, we do become revenue neutral by 2028. However, it doesn't take into account capital costs for capital projects for the cemetery. But just from the day-to-day operations, we still need to be contributing to the reserve. We still need to take into account capital projects. So when you look at it as an entirety, it's still not break even in 2028. Just on the operating side, it's a break even, which is certainly a positive story in terms of this bringing in new revenues.
So I think it would be a consultation to make sure we loop in communication so that we can have as plain language as possible, some clarity on what that looks like, and that option 1 and option 2 are as apples to apples as they can be, because there are base expenditures on the cemetery enterprise. So I just that thing is presented on as apples to apples a comparison as it can be, and we've got the information that we folks. The ranges I saw on the to just say on the appreciate Jeff how difficult this process is and for staff from time it's really nothing about absolutely exemplary work and have done on a day-to-day basis. As possible to make a decision for the community. So I will need, I think, a motion to engage asset management legislation update. So the Ready, Councillor?
It or anything like that. Am I wrong? Did I overlook it?
You're correct. This report doesn't speak to timelines. That's something that will be dealt with through the 2020 to 2022 budget process.
And I think what's interesting from about understanding that is, as much as the legislative tools are specific and new and are supposed to guide us towards a very detailed asset management, what are you doing to it's possible to just look at bare bones of the legislative piece, actually figure out how to meet, but have the process. But I think we need to do that because we're at again where it's less is probably not going to be sufficient to add equipment.
Chair Henry, okay. I really SCM in the and what like example what I would do is to say to our asset management, because one could anticipate that a building like RIM will have to or percent by way all the things.
So where staff are planning to go with this. Because
and at the time, press program as a whole in we have first for
own those savings entirely. Like, I meaning in terms of data plan. I, I like that.
With we our hydro help corporations across look at ways to make any of staff here. I think this is a good Councillor Bodley, go ahead.
Through you, Chair Henry. So I'm here now, just 0.8 million. It is within the 2019 to 22 budget. With the over and above.
For
a helpful, note pulled forward and be, but but so no those projects for that what I got from staff. Sure that, with that of being able to deal with things that tend to happen with build time. Jaworski, free. Next, we have question from Councillor Freeman.
Sorry, Kevin. There's a drive ramp. And concrete repairs, like at the thing at the front, because we're gonna.
We clarify where the Rim Park servicing is happening. That may help.
The access. Yeah, go ahead.
Our understanding of it, this is a piece to service the pavilion that's to close the access on. Or
side of the road. Oh,
yeah.
Okay. North.
I'm sure it's on love. So that mover side. Any questions, conversation, seeing none, all replacement, and of course any questions? Want to ask I see the AT team has stayed, just waiting for detailed questions on. So how deep do you have to pour that? No, back to
to let everybody know that it's on all this week and next week. Music. Thanks.
And it's only nerve-wracking if you or
the Combat Engineer in Regiment 31, they celebrated St. George. A lot of a reserve force on Parkside Drive in the Waterloo.
It's a bit further afield. I will note that on Saturday, community cooperation to a bunch of screaming people running around their houses, but the screaming people were running around on the lawn at Old Post Park. I think it's their highest attendance. First, motion adjourn, moved by Councillor Freeman, seconded by Councillor Veith. All those in favor of adjourning, we stand adjourned.